Dr. England sent me something. They're trying to form a government now. I said when the elections happened, yeah, I predicted some of the results of the elections, but I'm not excited about the prospects of forming government. I'm not really an advocate of any of these parties. I don't feel represented. I'm not cheerleading any of them. I can't understand why anybody would cheerlead any political actor, any politician ever. I can understand why you like this guy, or you don't like this guy, and why you don't like that guy. But I'm not for anybody because they're all basically disgusting people in my book. None of them are have good mitos, and that's to go into that business. You have to be a bad person, so we always lose. And he was saying that my fear is that even certain political parties, certainly the Haredi parties, are against that which we're trying to do. They are opposed to, let's say, Jews praying on the Temple Mount. They're just sticking with this like that. And even within the so-called religious Zionist party, which is itself a conglomeration of three different parties, I think Smotrich and Maoz are against it also. Maoz came out and said, yeah, Jews should not be going on the Har Bayis. We'll talk about him later. Well, I said, if you are in political position, in a governmental position, your position is Jews should not be making the pilgrimage. You are following the footsteps of Yeravam ben Nevat. That's what he stood for. That became his political philosophy, and all his successors, 20 successors after him, they were all different from each other in many ways that Nevi'im chose to ignore. What they all had in common was no Jewish pilgrimage to the Temple Mount. Correct? Now, something interesting happened. Yeah, but he was the last one. He finally realized it, and it was too late. Oops. Yeah, and also he let people go, but he did not force them to. But there's something that's alluded to in the Book of Kings that gets overlooked. There was a point in history, about 50 years after Yeravam ben Nevat, when things actually were lightened up. There was a covenant forged between King Ahab and King Yehoshaphat of Yehuda. They would actually after, I'd say, almost 5 decades of fighting between the two new states. It says, "U'milchama hayitha bein Yeravam u'bein Rechavam." Yeravam always had a state of hostilities, and it carried over into the Rechavam's heir Aviyah, who actually had war with Yeravam. So they were always in a state of hostility, and there was also a state of hostility in their successors. Asa of Yehuda, who was the third king after Shlomo, had problems with the new dynasty. Basha Melech Yisrael, Basha ben Elah, also was causing a problem. It says there was always a state of war between them. And it's only with the rise of Omri that things actually calmed down. And the sages say, yeah, it's because if you look and you see that Omri's granddaughter Atalyah married Asa's grandson, Yehoram ben Yehoshaphat ben Asa. The marriage was apparently, because Yehoram was born after Asa died, apparently. The marriage was arranged. Asa Melech Yehuda came to Omri and said, we will have our grandchildren marry, and that will bring peace between our people and also support your bid to be king of the 10 tribes. And it worked. You could find this in the Psukim eventually, if you look really closely and you do the calculations. And that brought about peace. And it says that Achav, when he wanted to go to war, he was actually visited by Yehoshaphat, who said, Amei Chami, my people are your people. Let's go to war together. We're all united in this. And it says about Yehoshaphat that when he took the throne, what does it say he did? An interesting discussion there. What does it say? I want to read exactly what it says. Yehoshaphat ben Asa malach el Yehuda bishnat arba l'Achav melech Yisrael. He became king of Yehuda in the 4th year of Achav. So they're going to reign contemporaneously, simultaneously. Yehoshaphat ben 35 shana b'mocho v'esrim shana malach b'Yerushalayim. He was 35 when he took the throne. 25 years he reigned. Achav basically reigned for another 16 years after that. Most of Yehoshaphat's reign, he died in battle. By the way, this battle we went together. Yehoshaphat survived. Achav died, and it says here, Achav b'mot lo saru. He did not get rid of the high places. People were still sinning by going to worship in other places. The next pasuk says, "Vayashlem Yehoshaphat melech Yisrael." Yehoshaphat made peace with the king of Israel. That's remarkable because his father had a state of war with the first king of Israel that he had in his reign. And the same thing about his grandfather and his great-grandfather. So this was a time of peace between the tribes. It says about Achav when he took the throne, something that you really should pay attention to. It says here that Achav was the worst of them all. Everybody was bad because they did just like Yeravam. It says about Omri that he was the worst. Omri, who preceded Achav, of course, was even worse. It says here, Vayaseh Omri hara b'nei Hashem, Vayara mikol asher lefanav. He was worse than anybody who came before him. How many kings of Israel were there before him? There was Yeravam, Nadav, Basha, Elah, Zimri, and now Omri. So Omri's number 6. He's worse than all those who preceded him. And then it says, "Vayelech b'chol derech Yeravam ben Nevat uvchat tatho asher chatiat Yisrael v'hach'isad Hashem elokei Yisrael b'havleihem." He did like Yeravam. Why did Yeravam do what Yeravam did? Prevent the Jews from going to pilgrimage and what? Replace their temple with the golden calves and the high places in Beit El and Dan. Yeravam did it for a political expediency. It says here, Omri did it just to get at God. He knew it was wrong, but he continued doing it because he wanted to get at Lahach Hashem. He did what Yeravam did in order to anger God. So that was what made him worse than all the previous kings. And then it says, Achav ben Omri Malach Yisrael b'shnat 38 shana l'asa melech Yehuda. Achav took over in the 30th year of Asa, who had only reigned for 40 years. So he took over, and so he was in his 4th year of reign when Asa's son took over. It says here, Vayimloch Achav ben Omri al Yisrael b'shomron esrim u'shtayim shana. He reigned for 22. Vayas Achav ben Omri hara b'nei Hashem mikol asher lefanav. And he was even worse than everybody who came before, even worse than his father. Listen to this pasuk. It was a light thing for him to do the sins of Yeravam ben Nevat. That was child's play. He took a wife, Jezebel. Jezebel means island of trash. Okay? It's another name that's like Kushan Rishasayim and Antiochus Epimanes and Agudat, Melech Amalek. That's how it's spelled. It's 2 gimels without a dot, and Memuchan. All these names basically are we gave it to them, meaning bad things. So this Ethbal is attested to in other places. He's the king of the Phoenicians, a successor to Hiram. And he went and he worshipped the Baal, introduced actual idol worship. He built a Beit Baal in Shomron. He just introduced idolatry. So everybody says that this phrase over here, Hanakel Lechdo, v'chatot Yeravam ben Nevat, that was easy for him to do. But in this case, Lakel Lechdo Yeravam ben Nevat means he didn't care to do what Yeravam ben Nevat did. Remember, he's making peace now with Yehoshaphat Melech Yehuda. Yehoshaphat's traveling up north. They're at peace. Yehoshaphat tells his people, my people are your people are mine. They open the borders. Achav, what we're reading here is Achav his father continued what Yeravam ben Nevat was doing just because it angered God. But Achav is a straight enemy of God. He is worshiping the Baal. His wife is setting up a temple to the Baal in Shomron. They are killing the Nevi'im. They are forgetting. What it means is he didn't care about Yeravam's form of worship because Yeravam's worship was worship of the true God, just in the wrong place. Yeravam was not idol worship. Yeravam's policies was not idol worship. What was going on here is he just gave up on that. For a little bit, Achav gave up on the policies of Yeravam. Straight out idol worship. Now, why is this bad? Because the question is, what's worse for me, living in the land of Yehuda? I live in the land of Binyamin, actually, which became part of the politically land of Yehuda, and I want to go visit the Jewish temple. What's worse for me, to be ruled by a Yeravam or to be ruled by an Achav, an Ahab? Yeravam says you can't go to the Temple Mount, and Achav says God, Baal, the worship of our foreign neighbors. Forget the Torah. When the seculars are in charge, the anti-religious, so that's like having an Achav in charge. What do they care? Moshe Dayan. It's all nonsense. They have a derisive attitude to everything Jewish. Or do I care more about Yeravam, a person who's ostensibly from on the outside and is telling me to do mitzvahs, just not letting me go up to the Temple Mount? What's worse? What's worse for me, living in the land of Yehoshaphat? And I'd say it's worse for me to have a Yeravam around. It's worse to have a Yeravam. I'm more concerned about the rise of people in the government, especially if there's only, let's say, 1 or 2 Knesset members from the ostensibly religious parties who make up half the coalition now, or at least if it actually would form, who knows? Maybe it won't form. Maybe we'll go to elections again. They're all against this. They're a bunch of Yeravams. I'd rather those Achavs like the leftists, Merits, and the rest of them, then I'd rather Yeravam, because at least the Achavs don't intrude on my religion. They don't try to. They have a replacement religion or something else, or they're atheist. I don't care. So I'm more worried about that. That should be much more of a concern for us. And it's kind of funny because that's who they are. I always thought the religious within the Likud always went to the Temple Mount, because the Likud's not a religious party. They had quite a few. You can find the whole list of them. Most prominently, of course, Feiglin in his time in Tzipi Chotoveli. They went to Har Bayis, and they're like, yeah, Har Bayis, it's for Jews. Because they could do that within the Likud. It's the religious parties. I've never seen a Shastnik go up on Har Bayis. UTJ, Chas v'Shalom, that's an Avera. They've turned the greatest mitzvah that God gave us, they've turned that into an Avera. And of course, the people within this Frankensteinian religious Zionist party of Smutsridge, which is all, like I said, a hodgepodge, major people there are against it. Like this newcomer, Ma'oz, he's against it. And there's what to say here. You could find, Yeshivat Har Bayit put this out, and it's good to show everybody. I'm going to show it on the screen right now. The letter from Rav Kook. They say, well, Rav Kook said it's usher. I think we just got something over here. Hold on one second. Chat? Was that chat? No. Okay. Rav Kook said, what? Rav Kook said, do you guys see it on the screen, by the way? You see Rav Kook's picture? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. We have no chat. I thought we got something in the chat. Okay. It says that they say that Rav Kook forbade Aliyah to Har Bayit back when he was chief rabbi. Remember, he came back to Eretz Yisrael. He was stuck in England during World War I. He came back when the British took over, the early days of the mandate. And he had also a political job. He was involved in, early, whatever it was, mandatory government politics, because he was forced into it. And he was also the chief rabbi. And he had a very difficult time. We saw the massacres in 29, and he came down with cancer in the early 30s. He didn't have Arichas Yami. I think he passed away at the age of 69, whatever it was, in early 1930s. He had a very difficult time, but he was also inspiring the Jewish community then. That's also when he put out his great works, and they were giving him cherims and stuff. Rav Kook did not get the respect that he deserved, although among the Litvish Jews, even those who would eventually be the forerunners of today's Haredim, who are not Bedatzniks, he was their leader. And Rav Kook came out publicly against going to Har Bayis, because now it's not the Ottomans in charge, it's the British. They're a little bit more open to these things. So he said Jews shouldn't go. So there's a letter right here. You can see the actual letter. Here it is. It's Rav Kook's typewriter. And they have it's signed by Rav Kook, explaining why at the time he forbade it. Now, for people like Avi Ma'oz and his political compatriots, once again I could use that word, and especially in their yeshiva, they say this is forbidden. It's Rav Kook. There's no way about it. Only until Mashiach comes. Once again, they're waiting for Mashiach. You're not allowed to until Mashiach comes, which of course Hanukkah teaches us is nonsense. But besides that, Rav Kook explains over here in Hebrew why he did what he did, and he said it was a political thing. He says here, "Ka'et mipnei matzafa politi." Now, because of the political situation, v'sakanat haklal, and the danger to the klal, the community, al yadesha sone'enu ma'alili malenu, because our enemies are falsely accusing us, they're libeling us, shehinenu chafetzin lakacha behem izroa et mekom hamikdash, because we are chafetzin, we want, or we're intending to take from them with force the place of the temple. That's Har Bayis. She'amidu alav es miskadam ba'avonoteinu harabim, where they have put their mosque due to our great sins. Chalila lanu la'asot pirsum l'shum machshava. Okay, heaven forbid us to publicize any thought, okay, any intent here. Hamidaberet binyan ishtalut bidei adam, which talks about the issue of trying through human hands, human, I guess. What's the word here? Let's see, stop this here. Human effort. Lifneit galut or Hashem bigula elyona ushlema, before the revelation of God's light in a complete and ultimate redemption. That's gulia elyona. Biyachas l'chinsnat makom hamikdash, with regards to going into the place of the temple. That's what Rav Kook wrote. Okay, and he also had written. And this is what I told the Va'adat HaChakirapo. This way I told the British authorities when they're investigating all the the violence and all that. Are you Jews plotting, some sort of revolution here? I remember my father showed me this. It was at the Tower of David Museum. What were the British thinking when they took over Palestine? They created a government. One of the most chutzpahdik things that they did was they they put out a decree saying that all the major religions have to observe the day that the British came into power as a holiday, a religious holiday. Okay? Yom Ha'atzmaut. You have to observe. The Jews in their synagogues should observe the day of this and that, recognition of His Majesty George V. I'm glad he's dead because he represented this. No, I'm not glad he's dead like that. I mean, his legacy is gone. He's not the king of Eretz Yisrael. At the time, during his reign, what did they do? They stripped us of part of Eretz Yisrael. They basically first said it's our right to our land, which was basically affirming the truth of the Torah, and then they went back on it. Okay, so they became, and then they even get their hands to the Germans, Nazi Germany, to do what they wanted. Throughout the reign of George V and then his son George VI, what did they do? They published the white paper. His Majesty's government made it that our Jewish brethren had nowhere to go when they were being massacred. That was their plot. And they prevented us from having independence in our land. They gave independence to all the other mandates. The French and the British had many mandates throughout the Middle East, Iraq and Syria, Lebanon, Egypt. All those had been, no, maybe not Egypt, whatever, the Saudis. They gave them all their independent states. They set it up. It was only in Eretz Yisrael, and the little bit of Eretz Yisrael they left for the Jews, where they were refusing to go and just let them have what they could have, so they could govern themselves and let in their refugee brethren and not get gassed. But they couldn't do that. That is what we owe to the government of His Majesty. So that was a problem. Yet they had the chutzpah to say that we should celebrate the British takeover of mandatory Palestine. And they also told the Muslims to do that, and the Christians to do that. So, of course, Rav Kook had to tell them, yeah, don't worry, we're not doing anything. What would Rav Kook say with the founding of the State of Israel? What would Rav Kook said in 1967? You think Rav Kook, who knew very well the story of Hanukkah, would have said, yes, we still have to stay put because now, we're afraid the British are going to destroy this whole mandate thing and then we'll get set back? They're Jews in charge. They're Jews who want to know what to do right. The problem with, let's say, a Bibi today is, who does he go to for his religious guidance? I don't know how religious he is. I'm not going to judge him necessarily. But he has chief rabbis who tell him. What do the chief rabbis tell him? He says, maybe he'll say, I'll be happy to do what the Temple Mount, what the chief rabbis say. But the chief rabbis themselves say, stay away from there. And don't let the Jews pray there. And his Haredi parties, who's more Jewish than Shas and UTJ? And Bibi looks at them and says, well, if they're not into it, so why should I be? And that's a problem. So I'll take an Achav any day. Sorry, I lost it again. That's the truth. I'm more worried about the Yeravams than the Achavs in this world. So that's a problem. And we've seen Rav Kook's response.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.